Break them up, Jim. They're 4-0. This is the Phillies Talk podcast brought to you by Team Toyota. He's Jim Salisbury, and I'm Corey Seidman. And another exciting Phillies game Monday night against Jacob deGrom and the Mets in the Mets season opener. After the Phillies did nothing for the first 6 innings against Jacob deGrom, as per usual, nobody seems to do anything against deGrom. The Phillies came alive in that 8th inning and showed that they can show that they can win in that way too. Coming back after some strong bullpen work. Just continue the theme of these first 4 games of the Phillies making winning plays late in games, huh?
Yeah, you're right. There's been so much to talk about after these 4 games. Most of all, they're 4-0. That's why you play the game, to try to win. Bryce Harper said something after the game last night that really resonated with me when he was basically talking about the bullpen. He said, just keep us in it and we'll keep grinding. And last year, the bullpen did not keep them in games, did not protect leads, did not give them a chance to pull off 8th inning rallies like they did last night. And we've seen in 4 games this rebuilt bullpen, even with a couple holdovers, but, largely rebuilt. They have a rebuilt attitude as well. They're going out there and pitching confidently. 13 innings so far, 1 run. They've gotten some terrific performances late in games in that bullpen. And Monday night, in going to 4-0, beating the Mets in their opener, they got a terrific performance in the 4th inning from Brandon Kintzler. He sort of was like all the people at the office chip in and they get a winning lottery ticket, right? But he's absent that day and he doesn't get to chip in. And so he doesn't, get a share of the big lottery ticket. He did not pitch over the weekend when the bullpen was so great in that rollicking 3-game sweep of Atlanta. So he kind of missed out on all the fun. But he made his Phillies debut on Monday night and really delivered in that 4th inning, didn't he, Corey?
Yeah, he sure did. And I was a little surprised that the first 2 guys out of the bullpen after a short start, Matt Moore did not complete 4 innings, that the first 2 guys out of the bullpen were Kintzler and Sam Coonrod. I think the way that we've kind of visualized it, the guy coming in after a short start to piggyback the starter would be, someone like Vince Velasquez or David Hale, but it's a pretty promising sign for the Phillies that both of those guys, Kintzler and Coonrod, showed an ability to go multiple innings. Coonrod, by the way, averaging 97, 98 with his fastball. Yeah.
It's funny you say I was a little surprised when I saw Kintzler get up as well. So Matt Moore labors through that 3rd inning, 31 pitches, walks the first 2 guys in the 4th. And all of a sudden now there's action out there and it's Kintzler. And with Hector Neris being down, not going to pitch a 3rd day in a row on Monday, I thought maybe Kintzler would be even a closing candidate or somebody late in the game. But Joe's got him up in the 4th inning. And I actually asked Joe about that after the game. He said, I said, why Kintzler? Why was Kintzler the guy you went to? He said, because he's closed and he's been in tough situations his whole career. And I thought he could get us a ground ball. So, Joe was really correctly reading that was a really crucial point in the game where it could have gotten away from them. And after walking those 2 batters, after Matt Moore walked those 2 batters, you got traffic on the bases. The ground ball at some point in that inning is going to become very, very valuable. So they fall down 2-0 there in the 4th, bases loaded, 1 out. Kintzler comes on and he gets, I think 4 pitches. He gets Kevin Pillar he gets that ground ball, gets that double play. Huge turning point in the game because, if Pillar dunks 1 in, 2 runs, now you're down 4-0. Jacob deGrom is on the mound. He ain't giving up that big lead. So Kintzler, I thought, in a lot of ways, was the star of the game. And it was funny, in that 8th inning, Trevor May is making his Mets debut. At one point, he was a former Phillies draft pick years ago, and at one point was the top prospect in the organization. Traded to Minnesota for Ben Rivera, now over with the Mets, signed a free agent contract this winter. Aaron Loop, we saw a couple of years ago during the Gabe Kapler era. He was a late pickup, I think in 19. Barely pitched. I think he spent some time on the DL. So May and Loop, both with this Phillies background, are entrusted with protecting this 2-run lead in the 8th inning, and they can't do it. Phillies rally for 5, take that lead, benefit. They got a little break on that error, hit batsman with the bases loaded. But hey, as Bryce Harper said, keep us in it, and we'll keep grinding. And Kinsler, Coonrod, and Connor Brogdon kept them in it so they could get something going in that 8th inning. We mentioned Kinsler, big turning point in the game. There were several other huge turning points in that game. Luis Guillorme's error in the 2-run error in the 8th was huge. But Luis Rojas, the Mets manager's decision to remove Jacob deGrom, who's throwing 99 to 102 and absolutely dominating the Phillies on 3 hits and 6 shutout innings, he's gone after 6 innings, and 77 pitches. And pregame, Rojas said that he thought deGrom had 100 pitches in him. He ended up taking him out because deGrom had not faced hitters in 10 days because the Mets had their first series postponed because of COVID down in Washington. So Rojas takes him out. Miguel Castro delivers in the 7th, but it all falls apart in the 8th. Now, if deGrom is kept in for the 7th, and now he can push that pregame prediction or a guideline of 100 pitches, maybe Castro's in the 8th and the Phillies don't, rally. Just a whole lot of things to really pick over in that game. Things to applaud, like Kinsler, and things to scratch your head about, like or second guess, which is part of the game. It happens. You can second guess Luis Rojas, the Mets manager, and he certainly was. Reading the New York papers this morning, he certainly was second guessed. He kind of put himself in those crosshairs by saying deGrom was going to go 100 pitches and then removing him at 77, right?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought when they pulled deGrom last night was just think about the New York headlines tomorrow morning if this thing goes south. There's no sympathy from Phillies fans for that one because they sat through it a couple years ago with Aaron Nola when he was pulled at 68 pitches after 5 1/3 innings against the Reds, and that also went south. I mean, I get trying to protect your guy early, but not only was deGrom only at 77 pitches, but he was just absolutely mowing the Phillies down at that point in the game. John Kruk mentioned on the broadcast that how good is deGrom? He's so good that he went through the Phillies lineup 2 times without really even showing his slider. And then he gets through the lineup the 3rd time, he's throwing that slider and he's missing bats against Rhys Hoskins and Bryce Harper. Our friends at PointsBet have Jacob deGrom as the heavy favorite to win the NL Cy Young at plus 400, a 4-1 bet. The next couple guys in that list would be Trevor Bauer, Max Scherzer, and Walker Buehler. But man, Jacob deGrom year in, year out with that 99 mile per hour average fastball. It's like, who else would you pick?
Yeah. An amazing pitcher. That power, he was up to 102 last night. You mentioned that slider, which he didn't really need because he just was powering them. This is a guy who came out of Stetson University. Corey Kluber came out of there as well. A pair of 2-time Cy Young winners. Amazing that they came out of that. I mean, that's real feather in the cap of that program. But Jacob deGrom wanted to be a shortstop, and his college coach used to say, "Okay, you can play shortstop, but you have a chance to make a lot of money as a pitcher. You got to get on that mound too." And he was right. So yeah, I think he's the best pitcher in baseball. I mean, remember last summer we combined on a story about who's the best player in the National League East. I think a bunch of us weighed in on it. Ricky Bowe, maybe Sean Kane, one of our producers, Casey Feeney and Sean, you, myself, and we had a wide array of opinions. Acuna, Freeman, Soto. I picked Jacob deGrom. I think he's the most impactful player in the National League East, even though he only appears once every 5 days. And we saw it last night for 6 innings, and the Phillies are glad they didn't see it for 7 innings.
Jim, does anything about this 4-0 start from the Phillies strike you as highly unsustainable? I mean, we know that the bullpen's not going to have like a .77 ERA all season, but the Phillies have won games with 2, 3, 4, and 5 runs, so it's not like they've lit it up offensively. That's a huge contrast to last season when they went 5-24 when they scored 4 runs or fewer. This year they're 3-0. The bats have been a little slow, but that's kind of how it's at least anecdotally to me, it seems like that's the way it is every year in early April, that the bats are slower than the arms, cold weather, especially here in the Northeast, and that it takes a little while for the offense to pick up.
Yeah, in terms of what's sustainable. The bullpen, 1 run in 13 innings. I mean, that's just exceptional. They're going to have hiccups at times, but the hope is that you have more good days than bad days. They have better ingredients down there. Alvarado's walked a couple tightropes. I think you might agree with me. Opening day was a bit of a tightrope. Last night was a bit of a tightrope. Gets 2 outs, and then he allows 3 straight base runners. And then that fly ball to the wall by Alonso off the end of the bat. If it's that much down onto the sweet spot of the bat, maybe it's a different story. So I think he's still a bit of a high wire act and can be a bit of an adventure. But hey, there's guys out there that do that, and some guys actually thrive on that sort of anxious adrenaline late in games. So I don't know that he's always going to be a slam dunk, but I always thought that the most important statistics for closers, and I think you can even extend this to relievers in general, is handshakes. Are you coming off the mound and getting a handshake in the dugout? Are you coming off the mound after the end of the game and getting a handshake because you closed it down? Sometimes you close it down and it's kind of ugly, but at least you got it done, and he got it done on Monday night. And I also think your point is really good about the offense. At some point, they're going to need to start scoring more runs, and you got to give your pitching staff. I mean, pitching's been great so far, but you got to give them a little cushion so that they can have they can have a bad inning here and there, or they can pitch. They don't have to pitch on edge all the time. So it all kind of slides and fits in together. But run support is crucial for a pitcher to, I think, get into his comfort zone and really pitch as well as he can.
Jim, the Phillies had a costly misplay in the field Monday night in the 4th inning when the Mets scored for the first time. Adam Hazley, a ball just kind of dropped in front of him. It seemed like he broke back and misjudged how deep the fly ball was, slid, and it was just in front of him. How short of a leash do you think the Phillies have with situations like that? They're looking for some offense out of that position, but defense is going to be crucial because, I don't think either guy is expected to hit 300, for example, Adam Hazley or Roman Quinn.
Right.
Do you think that kind of enhances Roman Quinn's chances of playing a lot, or is it just something that the Phillies move past?
Well, I don't think you move past it easily. I think especially in center field, their eyes are very much open, and the competition that we chronicled all spring long from spring training really just continues here in the regular season. And Joe Girardi's made that clear, that just because you're on the roster or in the lineup on April 1 or the first week of the season doesn't mean you're there on May 1, June 1. He's looking for continued production out of that center field spot. A lot of glare on that position. It's really under the microscope. Because they have a very deep lineup, but that's the one area you go, they could maybe use an upgrade there. So they're looking for offense and defensive production. Really haven't got it yet from that spot, but it's very early. That was a pretty ugly misplay because Hazley really started back on that ball, maybe took 3 steps back and then came scurrying in. I do think in some way you have to give him a bit of a break because the wind, it's the first week of April. The wind is howling. It was howling last night. It was a really tough wind. That said, it's the big leagues. Those excuses don't play real well. You got to put that ball in your back pocket. I don't think they're going to have a tremendously long leash at that position, but I don't think they're going to hold a wind-blown drop-in base hit against Hazley. I think they're going to give him and Quinn more time, evaluate. But if they don't see something, May 1st, they're scuffling. They need more production from that spot in the lineup. And if Odubel Herrera is producing at the alternate site, if Mickey Moniak is producing at the alternate site, if Travis Jankowski is producing at the alternate site, I think any one of those guys becomes in play as the tryout in center field continues. And if none of those guys lock it down or none of the guys here lock it down, I fully expect Dave Dombrowski will seek to upgrade that position around the trade deadline.
Jim, our last podcast was the morning of Zach Wheeler's first start, so we haven't talked since then. But how about those 2 Zachs against the Atlanta Braves over the weekend? Wheeler with 10 strikeouts over 7 one-hit shutout innings, and then Zach Eflin following it up with one of those like breezy, efficient, clean outings of his. The only run he gave up was to the second to last batter that he faced. We've talked about how, critical the top three in the Phillies rotation is. The strengths of this team are top three in the rotation and the lineup. And man, that first series with Nola, Wheeler, and Eflin, it's not always going to be like that, but it showed you what it can look like when those guys are locked in.
Yeah, and like you said, we've kind of always believed that's going to be the strength of the team. And the two Zachs, both in like 2.5 hours, it was really fun to watch. I mean, get the ball, put the ball in the box, throw a strike, get a ground ball, rack up some strikeouts, shake hands, get out of there. It was they were both a lot of fun to watch. And I think with Wheeler and Eflin, you're looking at two pitchers who the best is yet to come in their careers. I really believe that. Even though Zach Wheeler, I think, is 30 years old, he was inconsistent early in his career, always had that big talent, that big arm, but some inconsistency, some injury issues. And, Matt Klentak in the front office went out and signed him to a 5-year deal, $118 million. And at the time they said, we believe he's really ready to turn the corner in terms of health history and consistency. And I know he's only made 12 starts so far in his Phillies career, but it does look like he's turning the corner and becoming more consistent and more healthy and really finding himself as a pitcher. Last year he didn't prioritize blowing people away, even though he can just do it in his sleep. But he prioritized early contact, so keep his pitch count down, get deeper into the game. Early contact, get that ground ball over an arduous strikeout, and then ironically gets 10 strikeouts the other day. Very similar approach on Eflin, who has really learned a lot about his pitching style, what he needs to be successful. So I think you're looking at two pitchers really, becoming more and more comfortable with who they are, and in a lot of ways, I think the best is yet to come in both of those guys, and the Phillies could really benefit from it here in 21 and beyond.
Yeah, something that really sticks out with Zach Wheeler, and it has since the start of last season, in those 12 starts, in the first 3 innings of games, so we're talking 36 total innings, 12 starts, the first 3 innings of games. In those 36 innings, he's allowed 3 runs, a .75 ERA in the first 3 innings of games. So that first trip through the lineup for Zach Wheeler has been mostly spotless. And then Joe Girardi, he said it a couple times this week that it's a baseball truism that with a lot of the really good pitchers, if you don't get them early, you're probably not going to get them at all. I mean, the Phillies have seen that with Jacob deGrom several times over the years themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great stat that you mentioned. Wheeler's all business, man. He's all business. He goes out to that bullpen. He's got his sneer on, and I'm not surprised he comes out dealing early in games because he's, there's not a lot of feeling out period for him. He's out there to do some handiwork in that first inning, and he's doing it. You got to really. I know the previous front office takes a lot of heat, and I know ownership wrote the check, but real good signing by that previous front office. Yeah.
So, Jim, after this Mets series, the Phillies hit the road for 7 games, the first 3 against the Braves, the next 4 against the Mets. It's very early in the season. The Phillies have swept the Braves to begin the season recently. They did it in 2019. But wouldn't you think that the Braves are going to kind of be all systems go and really want to give it back to the Phillies this upcoming weekend? It looks like it'll be Wheeler in game 1 and no Nola in that series in Atlanta.
Atlanta will be fired up and primed to exact some revenge, a pound of flesh, as Shakespeare might say, and that's what makes it great. You see a lot of each other in the NL East and these divisions 19 times. Rivalries build. Hitters become very familiar with pitchers. Pitchers become very familiar with hitters. That's why you have to execute your pitches, right? But I mean, in that series, Acuna, Freeman, Ozuna, and Albies, 4 of the best players in the National League East. Maybe Acuna and Freeman, probably 2 of the top 5 players in the division. Ozuna, the reigning home run champ. Albies, a terrific player. Those guys were 3 for 44 in Philadelphia. And Freddie Freeman playing for a new contract, and Philly killer that he is. they're going to have to make pitches on them when they go down there on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You're going to have to make pitches on all those guys because I'm sure, you mentioned the sweeping the Braves in 2019. You remember where the Phillies finished that season, 16 games out. The Braves won the division, and the Phillies were 16 games back in fourth place. So you can get all pumped up about a 4-game winning streak to start the season, and it's certainly better than the alternative. But this sport is the ultimate test of performance, health, depth, concentration, endurance over the long haul. So there's a long way to go, but I'll tell you what, the first 4 games have been fun to watch, and just a whole new feeling is surrounding this team just because there's not a feeling of dread anymore when that bullpen door swings open.
Let's see how long they can keep it going. If the series wraps up with the Mets on Wednesday, then it's that 7-game trip with the Braves and the Mets, and then it doesn't really get much easier from there. The Cardinals come to town. It's a difficult April schedule for the Phillies, but so far, so good. For Jim Salisbury, I'm Corey Seidman. Thanks a lot for listening to the Phillies Talk podcast.